Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. Today is December the 26th. This is episode 232. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Malventano.
And I'm Scott Michaud.
We have a different lineup for you today. Jeremy is still out ice fishing. I was kind of hoping, we were actually thinking he was going to be back in time. We were going to have a jam-packed episode anyway. So, we have one fewer Canadians than expected, but still at the quota of one required by law. This episode's going to be a little bit different, though. It being the day after Christmas, not a whole lot has happened in the last week.
We're going to talk about makeup.
We're going to talk about makeup, perfume, perhaps.
Yes. Some blush.
What kind of
Rouge represent?
Yeah. Okay. What kind of
By the
base
way,
layer
Josh are
you
kind of
use?
shining a little bit. They want to put some powder on that.
So instead of talking about that stuff, we'll talk anything that happened this past week. We'll talk about on next week's episode in kind of the normal format. What we wanted to do this week is, I don't know why, I was listening to I listen to a lot of video game podcasts because that's how I keep up on the news of video games. And what we decided to do, that everybody's doing their best of the year thing, and I thought, that sounds like some crap we could try. I don't know how it's going to work, and we're just doing this completely out of the seat of our pants, and we got our nominations this evening in a Google Doc. So we're going to go through some categories of things to debate the best of the year. Now, what's interesting about this is Ken already doesn't like it. Ken already doesn't like it because he doesn't like the idea of what does it mean to be the best processor of 2012. Well, it depends. Are you looking for the best performance? You're looking for the best value. And I say that's the point. You're looking for the best processor, right? So that means we're going to have to debate and argue and come up with these different points and ideas about what is the best processor, what is the best motherboard. Does the fact that the super high-end Asus full-size ATX board have all this crazy features outstrip the fact that the tiny Z77 board has a lot of good features, but in a smaller package? And these are completely arbitrary, and we'll offer up, I don't know, random Editor's Choice Awards to all of the winners for this one, right? It's an editor's choice. We just happen to choose it as the best of the year. So yeah, you guys have any thoughts or comments on the process? Any ideas, suggestions, things to consider?
More time next time?
That's probably a good idea. Yeah, but I didn't want to push it off another week and get into the whole CES window as well. So we'll take this as work in progress, best of 2012. I'm not going to make up trophies this year. Next year we'll make up trophies and pass them out to the companies. That sound good? We could bring the trophies to CES and
Are they going to be the nice, marble base ones with plastic stands and the guy with the bat at the top?
Right, that'd
be awesome.
I was thinking the ones that are the clear crystal, but instead of it being actual crystal, plastic. Right.
They'll say Ryan Shrout on some of them and Ken Addison on some of them, and they'll be sharpied out.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the year, we actually take it. What we do is we bring them to CES. We present them with the trophy. We have this big setup, and when they're done, we take it back from them because that's expensive, and I'm not gonna let them keep it. And then we put another sticker over the word processor for graphics card, and we go do the next video. I think that would.
I think
well.
just college ruled line paper cut out would be just as good.
How about just a star sticker you put on their shirt? Give them a pat on the back and move on. So before we get into that, how was everybody's holiday? Did you guys have a nice couple of days off? Josh, anything in particular?
We had a lot of gravy.
Just gravy? Was it on anything
gravy.
or just gravy?
Yeah, it was on some duck. It was on some German dumplings, some nice Merschberters, and some stuffing. Yeah, it's some really good food.
Good.
Mashed potatoes, easy to eat with braces.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scott, did you do anything super exciting? I mean, you're Canadian. Do you have to go on that annual ice fishing pilgrimage?
No, I don't. But actually, on his pilgrimage, Jeremy stopped by my town. We met up for a little bit, but yeah, it was.
You got to
pretty
meet
typical
Jeremy
day.
in person.
Yes.
Way more intimidating in person, isn't he?
Intimidating is not the word I would use to describe Jeremy.
How about you, Alan? Why are you sounding so different?
I'm sounding so different because I am in Manhattan, right next to Madison Square Garden,
And they don't have
I'm
good
on a road trip
microphones there.
because I just bought myself a car for Christmas.
You bought yourself a car for Christmas, and did you have to fly there and then drive it home?
Yes.
Okay.
And your car doesn't have any headlights.
And we're road tripping it.
So that's like 6 hours worth of actual road trip time that you could do.
No, he's going back to Texas, right?
Yep.
Well, no, I'm 6 hours a day, and then it becomes night.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, there's that. We're going to fix that.
I would say
Flashlights
just as a
and duct
thought
tape.
in the future, they do car delivery. It's about $400, and save yourself some time driving in the snow, in the winter
Yeah.
storms. Maybe next time, buy the car in the summer. That's also an idea. As far as I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. And
Did you beat your nephews and nieces?
No, luckily I didn't have to. No, they were fine. It like my niece got she's really into gymnastics right now. She's 8 years old, and she got one of those like 12-foot long mats, that you do gymnastics on, and she got an 8-foot long beam like to do that stuff on, and it made it really crowded in the house when she wanted to set it all up. And I was like, maybe you shouldn't be doing flips on a 8-foot long beam inside the house, but nobody listens to me, so that's why I'm here at the office doing the show the day after Christmas instead of anything else. So yeah, everything went well. Next week we'll have one more episode before CES, and then all of that hell begins. So make sure you stick around for that. That'll be fun. I have no transition to this, so let's just start talking about it and see how it goes. All right, we're gonna start with.
Oh, that transition sucked.
I know, yeah, I know, and I appreciate you pointing it out twice.
Yeah.
Right. If I only point it out, it's not as useful. So let's talk. What is the best CPU? Now I have in our list of nominations, I only have 3 on here, and they're kind of arbitrary. If you look, I have the AMD Trinity A10 APU because I couldn't remember the model number. I guess that's the 5800K.
Correct.
Okay, that's the highest end one at least. I have the
Yes.
Core i7 3770K, and then I have the incredibly vague Intel Ultrabook Mobile CPU, and I just mean in general Ivy Bridge ultra low voltage type stuff probably. So this is where we get into the debate, right? Do you want to pick the highest end processor? Do you want to pick the best value processor? Do you think the fact that the ULV processors are bringing longer battery life to laptops make that noteworthy?
How about the Qualcomm Crate?
That could go on there. I don't know why it's the best. Why is it the best, Josh?
How many stinking CPUs have they actually sold this year? I bet
That's
they
true.
outstrip Intel. The actual numbers.
It's not the best-selling processor of 2012.
Who's to say it isn't?
Well, that's part of the things to debate, right? So it's as a whole. Alan, what was
I would
ahead.
bet that there were more Qualcomm based processors on Crate shipped than the Intel Ivy Bridge. I think that would be a pretty
Probably.
safe bet.
Yeah. I think that's fair. We can consider that. We'll put that on here.
I think
go ahead.
I think the Ultrabook Ivy Bridge and the Ultrabooks is pretty significant, just because I think it brought the performance up to the point where the CPU wasn't necessarily the bottleneck anymore.
Right.
Suddenly it was the storage, right? Which is a good thing. It's a good thing when you can shift it over to it being something else. That's the
Right.
considerable bottleneck.
Especially if we look at the integrated graphics portion of that, right? How many laptops now no longer need a discrete chip, much to NVIDIA's and AMD's chagrin, right? Like, I have 4 Lenovo Ultrabooks, well, 3 at least, sitting on this table right here for a category later in the show called Best Lenovo Laptop on My Desk. And none of them have discrete GPUs, and they all seem to do just fine. Not for gaming, of course, but they all seem to do pretty well. So that's, and I was tempted, actually. The Core i7 3770K is a great processor, but it loses a lot of the appeal of the integrated graphics portion of the HD 4000 because most people that use 3770K aren't using integrated graphics. Scott, what do you think?
Frankly, I'm not too big on CPUs this time. The main problem is just that we're kind of an ebb and flow between hardware developers and software developers, and the software developers really haven't had a whole lot of need to get that extra CPU horsepower. I mean, like even games these days, if you look at like what maxes out games, it's an i5 in most cases. If you get an i7, usually the frame rate doesn't even rise because it's so GPU bottlenecked. So there really hasn't been a whole lot of cases for performance. Battery life, I don't care about. I'm got my desktop here. It's nice to have GPU power built into notebooks, especially if you're starting to do a bunch of WebGL-based websites and stuff like that, where you actually want a little bit of graphics performance.
Right.
So I in that case, I'd kind of be leaning towards the A10 because of its practicality. That being said, I don't even really think that's not deserving.
So your vote would be no best processor of 2012.
my bet would be that probably the best processor of 2010 is still sufficient for 2012.
That's an interesting point. Yes, go ahead, Ken.
I got it.
Yeah.
And I can get Alan and Scott to agree with me. The i7 920.
The i7 920. I refuse to let that be
Yes.
best processor of 2012.
That's what
Oh,
I'm
darn.
using. I'm looking towards getting rid of it for animation stuff, but I mean, it serves the purpose for, especially for gamers. I mean, you can max out games with it,
Yes.
and it's like 4 years old at this point, 5 years old at this point. Is it 5 or 4?
Yeah, but you can't buy it anymore, one. And it's not any cheaper than what you can get Ivy Bridge parts that will probably still outperform it. And in terms of power consumption and heat, it's way worse off than what you would get with an Ivy Bridge part today.
Oh yeah.
Josh, what do you think? Let's take Crate off the table. I don't want to get into that field all of a sudden. Let's
understand.
stick with a desktop or at least a component level part. What about the idea of the integrated graphics in the A10 versus the integrated graphics in the Intel processor? And then obviously the AMD one is better, but we just haven't seen the design wins on the Trinity stuff that we were hoping to get, on the laptop side.
So far, not too bad. I think that AMD is more of a victim of the industry in general going downhill than really the success or non-success of the Trinity. They have better drivers, better compatibility, more speed, more features, and still a decent CPU. And their power envelopes are competitive, at least.
They are.
But yeah, it just when you've got Intel being able to sell as many as you want, and the global decline in PC sales, they're kind of screwed.
I kind of feel like we have to have an Ivy Bridge part as the best one. We can have a couple of runners up and like say the A10, but it's hard to pick it as the best quote best processor when its x86 performance is so much lower than it doesn't have to be the best, but it has to be not the worst. Right?
Yeah, but 90% of all computing that you'd buy this processor for, like guys in my office.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it's a quad-core processor. You're doing your Excel spreadsheets. You may be dabbling in some AutoCAD because you're an engineer and you're not an actual CAD tech.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what the hell you're doing anyway. It's going to be plenty fast and it's cheap. It's $119, and you've got a motherboard that's $100 that's got pretty heavy-duty features to it anyway, like 8 SATA 6 ports, built-in 4-port USB 3.0, pretty robust power delivery systems in pretty much most of these boards.
Yeah.
It's hard to put down a combination that costs $219 for a top end, and it's still going to be able to play games, do multi-threaded apps without a problem.
So the A10 5800K sells for $129 today.
Yeah, it's usually on sale for $119 pretty much everywhere all the time.
Plus $10 off promo code. Yeah, so $119.
Yeah.
The 3570K is $219. So we're talking about a $100 difference going from the quad-core Trinity to a quad-core non-hyper-threaded Ivy Bridge unlocked part. So here, go ahead.
If we're talking about value, why make it a K SKU?
Why not the 3570?
Ken mentioned earlier that he didn't really think the case Qs were maybe worth the
Especially
the extra
with
cost.
how Ivy Bridge behaves when you overclock it.
Well, so first of all, the case Q is only $5 more, right? And the ability to overclock incredibly easy through the multipliers, I think.
Yeah,
is a notable
I
difference.
thought the difference is it usually sits more than $5.
Okay, maybe it is on other like the 3770. I don't know. Is there a 3770 non-K part?
There is. There's a bigger price difference on those too.
Okay, so the 37, so it's $30
Yeah.
between the 3770 and 3770K. Here's what I think maybe is a good place for us to take a vote. I would like to put the A10 5800K up against the 3570K. And there's 4 of us. Well, there's 5 of us. Ken gets a vote too. And we'll pick between those 2 parts. One becomes the
Actually-
winner, one becomes the runner-up.
One last point as well. I was looking up this a little while ago, and when it comes to especially OpenCL performance, I was looking up articles in Phoronix, whatever the Linux
Yep,
based.
that's them.
Yeah, okay. And it turns out that AMD, like you said, they had better drivers than several other companies. They actually did quite a bit when it comes to optimization. You're seeing, like, bar graph. You see a big jump, especially over the last 2 months.
Is this on AMD side, you said?
On AMD's side, yes, in Linux at least. But over the last 2 months, they've been really hammering down on getting good OpenCL performance, which might end up being better because, again, it has that GPU. And if they can get the
Right.
drivers down, then you're just
Okay.
literally just waiting for the software developers to bother. It's not like you have, okay, the software developer does a little bit, then the driver guys have to balance out a little bit, then the software guys go back again. It's the driver developers are already starting pretty heavily to optimize for it, so we're just now waiting for people to make good apps for it.
Fair enough. Something else to consider. Okay, so we're going to take a vote. We've got 5 people here. It's A10 5800K, Core i, is that an i5, 3570K. All right, one will be the winner. One will be the official PC Perspective Best CPU of 2012 runner-up, which is a very prestigious award anyway, in and of itself, I think. So I'm going to vote like this. Who's in favor of the 3570K? Oh, okay. You can't see Ken's hand, but it is also up. So, Josh, your vote is for the A10.
No, actually, I was gonna hoping to do the 3770K because in
You would
terms
like to
of
get that instead.
performance and value, it pretty much very closely matches the $500 and $1,000 high-end Intel parts. I mean, really, would you consider spending $1,000 on the high end when you can get the 3770K for $330?
You are exactly correct. I would not buy Sandy Bridge E part today. I wouldn't do it. Okay, so let's do this.
And the hyper-threading is a better way to go on that. So yeah.
How about 3570 versus 3770? Let's do that vote.
Okay.
All right. 3770K. What do we got? Josh is a yes. I'm going to go with a yes, too. So, me, Josh, and Alan. That's 3. And looking at 3570K is the loser in that case. Let's not say loser. Let's say, what's that? First runner-up.
At the
something
same token,
to that
too, I mean, if you would want the higher end part, you'd probably know you'd want it anyway.
Yes.
The i5, I mean, can do just about anything these days.
I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and that's the thing. This is very arbitrary. We don't have a very specific metric that we're basing it on because that would be boring. Because if we had a very specific metric, we would just show you a graph and we would tell you why this was the best one. We wouldn't get to discuss it at all. So okay, winner
Get all
3770.
communist on you and tell you what you like and what you can buy.
You will buy this processor. All right, let's move on. This one will be way more. I don't even know.
Stupid.
This is going to be odd. Best motherboard of 2012. AMD platform, Intel platform. No, Josh, we're not going to consider ARM processors.
Damn it. Because, there's so many third-party motherboards available for ARM processors.
I don't know what you're going to get into. Okay, now, for these options, I have some very random things in place, right? So we've got the MSI M77 Empower motherboard, that was that no Z77 M-Power. I don't know why I have an M. There's no such thing as an M77. This actually, Maury just finished writing a review for this. We're probably not going to publish it until later in the week, but he really liked this motherboard. We have the Asus Rampage 4 Extreme. We have the Asus Z77 Mini ITX motherboard, which I have right here. That EVGA dual Xeon board, dual 2011 board that Jeremy is always infatuated with. And who added the Crosshair Formula Z? Was that Josh?
Me.
Okay. So I have.
Hey, we are missing one thing, and
that?
the IRC channel brings up a good point.
Okay.
Where's the ECS Dustbuster motherboard?
That we'll have another category for
Best ECS
best
board.
marketing video.
Ever?
Best ECS motherboard
Yes.
video. That's what we'll call that one.
That's like the
2012.
B-shelf horror films you see coming out of like Troma and stuff like that. It's like, wow.
Yeah, and we also have this motherboard is an option too, the Gigabyte Z77 motherboard with the dual Thunderbolt ports on it. Is this the right board?
Yeah.
I am. So okay, this is so complicated and hard to do. Does anybody have any thoughts on what would make it the best motherboard for 2012?
That's
A
Yeah,
processor that's worth a damn? So that kind of throws out.
No, I mean it could still be the best motherboard if it's a crappy processor, I guess. I mean,
Really?
kind of right because the motherboard.
I mean, if you don't subscribe to the Gestalt theory,
I'm voting for a VIA motherboard.
yes.
Sure, go for it. Throw your vote away. If the board has other additional features, right? So if you look at the Asus Z77 line, where it has the fan controllers that do very well, the USB 3.0 boost, stuff like that. That's not platform specific, but it makes it a very interesting and unique motherboard. I picked this P8 Z77i motherboard not because of the performance that it offers or the platform necessarily, but because it's a very feature-rich, very tiny motherboard that offers a lot of overclocking headroom and all that kind of stuff in a small package, right? So I don't know. Thunderbolt motherboards might be able to get a nod there. The first dual Thunderbolt motherboard, this one from Gigabyte, things like that. I don't know what was.
And let me
ahead.
throw this in.
Yeah.
Obviously, in our list here, we are throwing out probably the most advanced chipset is not being represented. That being the AMD A85, 8 SATA 6 ports, 4 internal, USB 3.0. Intel has nothing that's even close to that at this point.
Does the Formula Z use that?
No, it's an old whatchamacallit. It's the 990FX with the
Okay.
950 SB 950 Southbridge.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's no, you delete it. I was gonna say I was talking about it with Daryl all along.
Yeah. The problem is there's so many, there's a limited number of processors. There's an infinite number of motherboards out there, and none of us have had hands-on time with, very many of them over the course of a year. So I don't even know how to pick a best motherboard. It's something we just want to skip. Like we can't pick best chipset because well, I guess we would, and it would be that one. But I mean, it's
Well,
I don't know.
not
What the hell is wrong with Intel? They used to be cutting edge with that stuff, and now it's
Ask Alan. Remember when we were going to have
They
6 SATA
dropped-
6 ports on that too? But
Yeah, they dropped the ball on the SATA 6 gigabit a while ago. Hey, we yelled at them at CES, for 2 CESs in a row, and they
See
didn't
how
listen,
good that did.
so.
see how long it took to get USB 3 on.
it took a long time to get USB 3. Yeah, trust me, I'm not advocating that we applaud Intel's chipset team for moving things forward. I don't know. I can't think of a specific. I mean, the only boards that I can talk specifically about are ones that we've had here and that I've actually used, which is more than your average consumer, obviously, but still not everything. I have no experience really on the AMD side this entire year in terms of platforms, which makes things difficult.
But we have to pick one. You made it a category.
I made it a category. I had to pick one. Let me show you one of my favorites. That is this
crinkle, crinkle, crinkle.
crinkle crinkle. The the P8 Z77i, so the mini ITX platform, Z77. You can put that 3770K that won our best processor award in here. You know, you got a full-size PCI Express slot. You've got a mini PCIe slot for a wireless adapter here. You do not have Thunderbolt, but you have HDMI, DisplayPort, DVI, USB 3, eSATA, all that kind of stuff, plus a pretty good amount of overclocking headroom on this. 4 SATA ports, 2 DIMM slots. But I feel like this is kind of really applauding a form factor decision, not necessarily any particular design decision. I don't know. But if I had to pick my favorite motherboard, maybe not even best, but my favorite motherboard, it might be this one. It would probably be this one.
I've got it.
Yes, Ken. This one could be good. This one is one we just got into. The Z77A G45 Thunderbolt. So this is the lowest cost Thunderbolt solution. How much was this? Like $140?
160 right now on Newegg.
$160 gets you an incredibly overclocking friendly Z77 motherboard. This is the exact same. Here's the secret. It's the exact same PCB as the GD80 board.
With a couple features.
With
not
a couple of
soldered.
features, extra add-on chips taken off, so they could sell it for like $100 less. And so this gets you Thunderbolt, SLI, Crossfire, all that kind of stuff for the $160 range. To be honest with you, if I was building a new system, this is probably what I would put in my machine. Does that make it the best motherboard of 2012? I don't know, but it maybe makes it my...
Let's say yes.
You say yes. I mean, does anybody have any other, like, really interesting thoughts on this?
It's a metric, and that's more than we've had so far.
If you were going to build a computer today for yourself, Josh, what motherboard would you put in it?
Probably this one. I mean, it's the Crosshair 5 is really nice, and plus I've got a plethora of AMD processors around anyway. You know, why would I want to buy anything new? Look, 8 SATA 6G ports.
Yep. Yeah.
2 of them are through a different chip, but I mean,
They're there.
yeah, it's still got what the Sound Blaster FX or whatever the hell they call that now.
Right.
Yeah, but beefy board, and it's still a good chipset, even though it's not PCI Express 3.0. Is that a big deal?
Yeah.
Is it a deal breaker?
Scott, Alan, you guys have any thoughts on if you were building a system today, what board would you use?
I would go small. I would go with that mini ITX board.
Well, that makes sense for you.
Yep.
It only has 4 SATA ports, though, Alan. How would you survive?
Well, because what I would use it for, I would use it for like a front end for a home theater
Okay.
and be able to game on it since it's a Z77 board, right? It's pretty halfway decent.
Yeah, oh no. I mean, in terms of performance, it will perform identically to this G45 Thunderbolt motherboard from MSI. If you look at just what processor can you put in it, what graphics card can you put in it, memory, and that kind of stuff. So, Scott, any last thoughts?
I mean, if I replace this, which I'm planning on doing it sometime this year, I'd really kind of choose the motherboard based on, I wouldn't really have too many features in mind, but I'd probably base it more on the processor I'd buy and whichever one has the best reviews when it comes to reliability, because I have a really bad history with motherboards just up and dying.
Yeah, that's not good.
So probably it would be durability.
So we all five have different opinions, and if we take a vote, I don't see how that will turn out. Did the chat room come up with anything in particular? I guess what we'll do is the Intel DX79SR is a great motherboard. This may be too difficult to do. I'm gonna go with let's choose 3 runners up and no winner.
3-way tie.
A 3-way tie. I like this board now that you found it. I had forgotten that we had gotten it in.
It's okay in a 3-way.
Oh, Josh, that's supposed to be Josh's joke. That's where you're supposed to type it. No? Oh.
You know, I'm just not going to go that low today.
Today.
I brought the lower.
It's because his knees hurt.
Yeah. Got
Okay.
dirty knees.
So I'm gonna pick the MSI G45 as one of the winners. And Josh, do you want to make that board one of your winners?
What sucks about this board? It's still 2-year-old plus technology,
Okay.
which kind of blows.
Okay, fair
And
enough.
so,
At
even
least
though
one
this
has
is a
new
kick-ass
tech with
board,
Thunderbolt. Okay,
So
you got to push the envelope.
So what about an A85 board then?
an A85 board, Josh. Do you have any?
You know that Gigabyte FA85X UP4 whatever the hell they talk about? It's actually a really good board. It looks sharp. It's got good power delivery, nice feature set, and it's still pretty cheap. So sure, let's go for that one.
I'd say we can probably rule out the EVGA Dual Xeon board, because if you want that board, you know you want that board because you're buying 2 Xeon processors to stick into it.
Oh, I want
So
that
it's not
board.
really going to be a leaderboard, because anyone who wants it kind of would probably know it
Yeah.
before they blow a couple thousand.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with leaving that out as well. That's more like crazy extreme stuff, not necessarily best. Okay, so let's move past the motherboard section. We'll winner all those 3 things we just said.
We did 2 things.
That was a cop out. All right, here we go. This will be interesting for you guys. You ready? Best GPU of 2012. Best GPU, not graphics card. We're not going to pick the Matrix card versus the Lightning card or anything like that. Just the best GPU. Now, the 4 finalists I kind of put in here just arbitrarily were the 680, the 660 Ti, the 7970, and the 7870. That's kind of like the high-end single GPU from both companies, and then kind of like the same range of GPU on the mid-range size. So this again will come down to what your opinions are in terms of best GPU. That's weird. We got some weird. I think somebody's using a snowblower outside our front door. 680, highest performing single GPU card, debatable, but probably against the 7970, and then the 660 Ti, when it came out, was an incredibly impressive card, and still kind of is, because you can overclock it and get about the same performance as a GTX 670 for less money. I don't know. What about thoughts on this?
Boy, you can get a 7970 for cheap. Mm-hmm. The 7870, I think, still is kind of in a class by itself. It's significantly less expensive than a 660 Ti, even though it doesn't perform nearly as well. It still doesn't put out a whole lot of heat, doesn't pull a lot of power. But yeah, the 680 was kind of the benchmark for this, or high watermark for this generation of performance and power and overall feature set. However,
Yeah, I'd back him up on the 680 also.
yeah, the 7000 series are totally DirectX 11.1 compliant, while the 600 series from NVIDIA is not. So does that make a difference to you?
No, probably not. Like, I mean, not in the grand scheme of things. In the same way that I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. At least not throughout 2012. Right? Windows 8 only came out in October, and the GTX 680 came out in March. So it's had a large window of reigning as the highest performing card. But you're right. The price difference, as we decide today, is you can get a 7970 for $480. I'm sorry,
Less than that.
$380.
$430.
No, you can get a 7970 for $379.
Yeah.
A GTX 680 is like it's like there's one here that's $439 from ECS, but $459 for PMY, $469 from EVGA. So we're talking about an 80 to, let's say, $90. Let me go back here to this. Here's our 7970s. $379, right? One from Power Color. Not one of the gigahertz editions, but $379. You're talking about an $80, $89 price difference between these two cards now. And that has to throw a wrench into the 680 just kind of walking away with it, right?
Correct.
And I gotta say that 7970, well, actually I think it was more 7950 than anything else, but when they did that Boost Edition kind of upgrade to it, I could see people complaining, and people have definitely complained about that. But I could see people complaining if it was felt like it was unintentionally crippled to get that boost later on. But having the support to go back and tune your old products that much extra for free kind of is
Yeah, you're talking
Something
about
should
like
be
the big
vouched
Never
for.
Settle push, like the big Never Settle driver that they pushed out, or you're talking about the Nvidia side?
No, he's talking about the boost upgrade on the 7950.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true too.
so the 700 line,
But
yeah.
also, I was going to say what I thought you were talking about is when AMD released that set of drivers in October or November, when they started this Never Settle kind of big game bundle, was that they increased frame rates in a lot of these games and actually caught up. The 7970 caught up to the 680 in a lot of instances.
I was kind of referring to that too. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you because to me it kind of seems like the AMD 7970 or the AMD 7000 series in general, it came out first, and they fell behind for much of the year, and then they kind of addressed some of the issues, the performance issues, and are kind of again at or above the performance level at the same price point of the NVIDIA cards. Meanwhile, I don't really see that on the NVIDIA side. Can you guys think of anything where it's very obvious that NVIDIA went back, fixed things, made things better, or have they pretty much been, here's what we launched with, and they've kind of done the standard minor increments from that?
Yeah, that kind of seems
been
the
more
case.
consistent.
It doesn't seem like NVIDIA really did a whole lot after their launch. I mean, you talk to the marketing folks, and obviously they have. And in reality, yes, they have as well. I mean, they've released not just the 2 gigabyte cards, but the 4 gig cards. They've had plenty of driver updates. But in
Yeah.
terms of what we've seen in the advancement of a product from when it was launched to right now, yeah, we've seen some performance jumps, but nothing huge like what we've seen with AMD. But then again, when the 7970 was launched, it was a $599 product.
Right.
It was kind of raw. I mean, they had it out first, and the 7870 was $399 when it was first
yeah,
out.
I think so.
I mean, everything has dropped significantly down in price, which is good for the consumer. And they have caught up, and,
Yeah.
and at least they have been agile in addressing the market and knowing where their
I think NVIDIA
weaknesses
deserves
are.
a lot of credit for like the first time that I can remember them coming in and undercutting the competition, right? They forced that those price reductions by AMD, and there was a good amount of time throughout the year where NVIDIA was just destroying them in performance and pricing. But AMD did a good job, I think, of stepping up. Yes, Ken.
So what about the 690? I think you could argue that it's one of the best engineered dual GPU cards we've ever seen. Because performance, like
Yeah.
the clock speeds were the same, weren't they? Or within
They're really
like
close if they
5%.
weren't the same, yeah.
It was actually cooler than 2 cards in SLI. Mm-hmm. Quiet.
I think the 690 is a terrific engineering feat, but I find it hard at this point to recommend $1,000 graphics card. How much was the six? I mean,
Yeah.
now the 680 hasn't really come down in price all that much. Actually, has it really at all?
It
Well, it started at $499, and now it's down $50 on average.
Maybe a little
Yeah.
bit less than that. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah.
Although the 690
It was
came down in
500.
price.
The 690's gone up in price.
I think it's over 1,000. Launched at 999 or something like that, I believe.
Yeah, I trust me. I think the GTX 690 is an awesome card. I don't think it had the wings that Nvidia hoped it would have in terms of it being the upper echelon product, like the flagship product, because it was so expensive. That you could tell they spent a lot of time and money engineering this and designing it and all that kind of stuff. They did a great job. But I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot by sticking to that $1,000 price. So
Think if they would have offered it as an 8 gig product, each GPU has 4 gigs of memory, because people who want to buy those things, they're probably running multi-monitor or, a single really large monitor, or they have 3 of those stinking Korean monitors.
Yeah.
And 2 gigs per GPU is just not enough to give, I think, the smoothness that you're going to desire at those resolutions with a high-end game, which is going to use as much video memory as possible.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So I think that it's good to bring up because I kind of it had slipped my mind, obviously, but
I have one more point about the 692. I mean, it is a very good technical feat, but the problem is that one of the things that NVIDIA did with it is they said, we made this awesome technical feat, no one can stray from this. You can't
That's
call
true.
it 690 if it doesn't follow this rules, and that's not a good thing for companies to start doing.
it's not good for our industry. It's not good for. I mean, we never saw a Mars 3 from Asus, and
Even though we saw
even though we saw a-
PCB
right,
in design.
right, and I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think actually an EVGA post on their forums talked about other things like they couldn't include their power management software anymore with the 600 series because of that. So okay, I think best GPU. I think we're pretty much between the 7970 and the 680. So let's do our five person vote here. Who? There we go. Show of hands, except for Ken because he's off camera. Let's do the HD 7970.
I always buy NVIDIA stuff for like the last several years, but
All right, that's 3 of us. And then the GTX 680, I'm assuming Alan and Ken are gonna vote for that. I think they're both still really good cards. I just I
You know what?
I like to
At
give
the
them
heart
credit
of the
for it.
7970, it seems like it's more of an open source type community. They allow you to do more stuff. They're allowing the manufacturers to do more interesting things with it. We've got MSI doing their afterburner. We got Asus with whatever the hell they call their stuff. And AMD does allow
Yeah.
them a lot more flexibility in differentiating their products
Yeah.
than what NVIDIA has.
that's why I voted for them. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't care about that. I just want a stock GPU that performs better outside the box.
Yeah,
out of the
and
box.
there's a lot to say to that. Like
I don't
all of
overclock
our
my graphics
the
card.
funny thing is like all of our kind of systems are using NVIDIA cards here. Well, I guess we do kind of have a mix, but it's trust me, when NVIDIA launched their Kepler line with the frame rate limiting and the GPU boost and all that kind of stuff, it was incredibly revolutionary. It's like, look at all this cool stuff they did. But I don't know, I feel like if they had done a little bit more work throughout the year to make it stand out. I kind of feel like they pushed out all their parts and they went, okay, well, we've obviously won this battle, and they kind of turned around and left. Right? And they didn't really push anything on marketing. They had the bundle with what was their big game bundle this year?
Borderlands with the 660.
Borderlands 2. And they did
AC3.
AC3, but that was on the really lower end stuff. Whereas you saw AMD basically, I mean, this is not like altruism. They did it for business reasons, and because they were, they had to. They did that huge Never Settle game bundle. They pushed out the new drivers. They dropped prices on graphics cards. It's interesting, but yeah, if you bought a 680, nobody's going to chastise you for it, or a 660 Ti, or anything like that, right? So.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most competitive years in terms of graphics between the top two guys.
Yeah, which is good.
I mean, we've
got to love
it's,
that,
it's
right?
good for us.
Yeah,
There's a lot of things coming from, I think it's the GK 110 side of things that probably when it reaches the consumers next year would be amazing. Thinking specifically of like the virtualization of
Yeah.
GPU stuff.
Yeah.
If that starts to become mainstream competitive, you're not going to have to worry so much about switching between operating systems because you could run a full-featured virtual machine if you actually cared.
okay. Yeah, it's
Give me dual GK 110 graphics card of the next year.
graphic GPU 2013 already decided.
It'll be 20 inches long.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break here. We have several more categories to get through, and then we are going. But first, we have a special holiday message from Alex at MSI.
The all-new Z77 M-Power mainboard from MSI is poised to change the overclocking game. Every Z77 M-Power board will have a factory 24-hour military-class burn-in test completed before shipping. Additionally, performance-optimized features such as Go-To BIOS, Multi-BIOS 2, V-checkpoints, Bluetooth 3.0, and onboard Wi-Fi allow users convenience and total system control over their overclocking and gaming experience. This is the new endurance champion, Z77 M-Power from MSI.
I was just kidding. It's not a special holiday message, but it is a message from Alex.
I
at
should
MSI.
have.
I was going to start singing some Christmas carols in the middle
the
of that.
background.
I hear those
I should have
sleigh bells
composited a
ringing,
Santa
ringing,
hat
ringing,
onto Alex.
I was gonna say the same thing. You should have got in contact with them and been like,
Or,
"Hey,
or at least get like a snow flurry overlay that we could have done for that.
How about some bells in the background?
If only we actually planned these shows ahead of time, huh?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Okay, so let's get into our next category, best storage. Best storage device, best storage thing. And
And we're not talking about Alan's posterior.
Hey, look, Alan's still there. All right, so here's our 3 nominees, and I put these in here, and then we'll let all of us decide if I'm going to add any more nominees we want to discuss. How about the Samsung 840 Pro SSD, the OCZ Vector SSD, the WD Red hard drive, and I think I had in here as well the 4 terabyte hard drive 2. So, Alan, what are your initial thoughts on this category?
You had the 4 terabyte black in there,
That's not out yet?
which no, it's sort of out, but I just think that it was the wrong way to go. Like they should have come out with a 4 terabyte slower spinning drive first.
Okay. All right,
Not a
so let's
black.
cut that.
Yeah.
So what about these other 3? So I mean, it's kind of we can't go by performance alone because SSDs will beat hard drives. What do you think about the red versus the SSDs that we have on here? And are there any other SSDs that should be included in this list of possible winners?
I think the red was significant in that you have a bunch of home users shifting towards using some sort of a NAS type device with multiple hard drives in it, and up until the red came out, the vast majority of people were using greens, and greens didn't have the time limited error recovery, reds do. So if you had any form of a cascade failure of your RAID, or like one drive fails and there's a bad sector on one of your other ones that you didn't know about,
Which I have
if you
been
had
known to do.
greens or basically any other hard drive, then you're asking for trouble in that situation. You'd potentially lose your entire array. So the Reds fixed that, and they did it at a price point that was only like I think $5 more than the green is what the price difference has been. So if you have a home NAS and you're getting an enterprise feature, and not only is it this, people can argue, yeah, okay, time limit error recovery is just a firmware thing. Sure, it is. But above that, the spindles had the dynamic balancing to them, so they actually have like little weights that shift around. So if the spindle and the pack of disks is off balance, it corrects it. It's like just on its own. So if you want like really quiet hard drives that you're going to have sitting in multiples, the red's the way to go. If you just want one big hard drive, then you can either go with the black, like 4 terabyte black, if you really wanted to, or with a green. But yeah, I think the red was a big like storage change in storage stuff, right? All the SSD stuff, sure, those have been improvements, but they've been incremental improvements. And they've just been following the same trend. They just, okay, another one comes out, it beats the previous ones. Okay, now there's another one that's going that much faster.
Right.
Right. So it depends on which way you want to, slice it.
Well, so here was my theory, or here's my thought process on why I included these specific ones.
Okay, can I ask something
yeah.
of Alan really quick?
Sure.
Support issues for Reds. Don't we have a whole lot of anecdotal evidence that these things are dying at a rate that just doesn't seem normal, or is that just some FUD going around?
I'm not sure. I didn't see that much yelling, and I sort of chalked it up to, hey, the few people that do have issues with them, are the loudest, and that's what you see. But I don't know. I mean, they have a really good support contract with them. They have like a 24/7 hotline specific to the Reds for support.
Didn't you have one drive die on you as well?
I had, it wasn't a red, but it wasn't a red that I had die on me. I ordered 4 Reds and one was DOA
Oh, okay.
out of the box. So, and, I just had to swap it out. But that's not really a big data point. That's, okay, I ordered 4.
1 out of 4 ain't bad.
So looking at these, I just went to the Newegg page for the WD Red 3 terabyte. Now, I always take reviews on these sites a certain grain of salt, right? Because people that buy a hard drive and then don't have any problems are much less likely to come back and complain or talk about how great their experience was. But if you look at these reviews, 34% of them are one egg, I guess. People talk about woe is me, failure rate, DOA rate. But here's a guy who's saying, oh no, this guy gave it 4 stars, but he bought 2 drives and 1 showed up DOA. So it does look like there is an issue with that. It's bad packaging. I don't know if I understand that part, but
I can explain that part.
Okay.
It's how Newegg ships their hard drives. The Newegg ships those Reds not in Western Digital boxes with the little, insulative, whatever, suspension kind of piece of plastic in there. It's just they slap them together and wrap the whole pack of them with a sheet of bubble wrap and then stick it in a box.
There's one review here that says, are the bad reviews due to poor Newegg packaging? It's odd that Newegg seems to have the worst reviewed instances of these drives. I bought 3 from elsewhere, performed a full format, no issues. It's just one guy. But there, from Newegg, there does appear to be a lot of negative reviews. Just as a quick sanity check here, let me look on the Amazon reviews, which would be the kind of the second most frequented place for consumer reviews. And you can see right here, there's 95 reviews. There's only 5 1-star reviews, no 2-star, and 2 3-star. So it does kind of maybe seem like it is either Newegg's packaging or perhaps a bad batch of drives that went out in that specific allotment to Newegg. Is that a possibility too, Alan?
It could be.
Okay.
It kind of scared me a
Yeah,
bit
as
too,
they were
'cause
leaving the Western Digital factory, somebody sideswiped the supply truck and everything.
They said send
I've
those
seen
out.
Experience a 100G shock.
Actually, I've seen some issues with like the same kind of disparity if you looked at greens. Not so much anymore, I don't think, but when they first came out, it seemed like Newegg had, more bad green drives versus if you looked at other vendors' reviews like Amazon. It was kind of weird. So I do think that's I think a fair chunk of that is probably how they package and ship their drives, because they are kind of just, I cringe when I see someone just slap them together and bubble wrap them like
I've
that.
seen also quite a bit of fail rates, mostly looking at Newegg on some like 3 and 4 terabyte drives as well. So that's kind of got me a little bit nervous to buy any. So
Interesting. Okay. So let's see. What was I going to say before? Oh, the reasons I picked these particular drives, these SSDs. I picked the Samsung 840 or the 840 Pro. Alan likes the Pro a little bit better because I thought it was significant that we have a completely vertical builder of this device, right? They make the controller, they make the memory, they make the PCB, they sell the drive to the consumer. I think it's interesting to see how successful Samsung has become both with the 830 and now at the 840 in terms of offering not only one of the best performing but one of the most reliable SSDs while also being competitive in terms of pricing. I picked the Vector for a similar reason because the first time that OCZ has their own controller, and it's also the first time where there's, for all the negative press and the negative backlash that OCZ has gotten over the last year for SSD failures, that this one seems to be taking a different direction for the company, right? And that's, both of these kind of stood out for those kind of reasons, right? You could look at Corsair and ADATA and all these other companies that make SSDs, but they're all essentially the same controller, the same technology inside of them. It's just a matter of how they support it and what their pricing is. But I wanted to pick ones that were kind of unique in that way. Any thoughts on that, Alan?
There was an interesting back and forth. If you look at that, the 840 series was pushing their flash technology to a smaller process, right? Even yet another die shrink. Whereas OCZ decided to go the safer route and go with the more mass-produced 25 nanometer flash, and even take it one step further and buy the wafers and cut the dies themselves and package them themselves into the chips.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of interesting when you look at that between those two drives. And above that, if you look at how it's like the die shrink doesn't really get you anything other than potentially reduced cost, right? Because if the Vector actually outperforms the 840 or the 840 Pro even. So when you get right down to it, it's the controller is still really the limiting factor on how well these drives can perform, at least at present, until something faster comes along for serial ATA or your interface. But it's like your die shrinks on your flash is really only cost, but at the same time you have OCZ threatening to be selling a drive cheaper than the Samsung drive, just based on the fact that they're going with the stuff that's just available in more volume, basically. And on the flip side of that, Samsung they do incredibly well, mostly because they sell anything that's an Apple computer that has an SSD in it. That's their OEM, basically, their OEM supplier for their parts. And Samsung is an OEM supplier for a lot of other manufacturers as well. They just tend to go that way, and I think that's been because OCZ has had a bit of a kind of hit and miss track record on the performance and reliability of drives, mainly because of firmware issues, and there was the whole SandForce debacle.
Vertex 4, cough.
There was all that. I think it was also because I think they just had too many models. Like, there was just too much stuff available from them. And I think if I was an OEM and I saw like 25 different models of SSDs, I'd be like, well, what the heck do I use for my standard drive?
Sure.
What do I do? So, and now that since OCC is, they did a bit of rearranging, restructuring, call it what you will, a few months back. And when they did that, they closed down a bunch of their sections. They were like, okay, we're just doing too many different things. So they're focusing on a very small number of products now, and the Vector is one of them, and it seems like they're doing it right to me.
So of these three devices, then, the Vector, the 840 Pro, and the WD Red, which would you kind of consider the most important of this year, then?
Wow, that's loaded. But I'm actually going to go with the Red.
Okay, you
I think the Red made a.
I think that I would probably have gone with one of the SSDs, but if you look at it, SSDs haven't really changed super dramatically in terms of performance and features or anything like that over the past year. Whereas your claim with the Red is that this is a bigger difference maybe than what we see in the SSDs. Ken, you were going to say something?
I think it was not just the firmware thing in the Red. I think it was that balancing thing. It gets a lot less press than I think it should, than that feature should. Okay. And that's just because you just have, it's like the only hard drive I've seen that can automatically balance its own spindle. So if it was vibrating, it wouldn't be, basically. If it was a drive a little off balance, it would just fix itself.
Really? Because I usually just take my hard drives to the tire dealership here, and they put some weights on it, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Scott, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the biggest story for storage is just that SSDs are now very viable for a lot of different computers.
Yep.
The price has just crashed. I know we have a price drop category.
Don't give away the secret.
Don't ruin anything, damn it, Scott.
Show your screen. How many times have you shown your screen so far? But no, I mean, it just seems to me like the biggest story is just that you can get a decent SSD, period, for ridiculously low cost per gigabytes, like 50 cents sometimes.
Ken?
So going along with that, it didn't come out this year, but I think the storage device of the year is the Samsung 830.
Why?
It has been the
Well,
SSD
we could just call it Samsung drives.
It has been the SSD to buy the entire year. It's what we've been recommending the entire year.
True. It's true.
Yeah, and it still would be today if it were available.
Yeah.
Because
But they stopped making the damn thing.
But they stopped making it.
Yeah, but it's a year is 12 months.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
And
really, the 830 does nip at the heels of the 840 in terms of performance. It was a very, very good jump, and it was the largest jump that Samsung had made in performance. Their SSDs had just not been that great.
The 840 is iterative on 830, but the 830 was the big thing.
Yeah, it was a huge jump. And the fact that it was the one that OEMs were using, it was like almost embarrassing before the 830 came out. It was like, yes, it comes with an SSD, but it's like, It's not that great. And then once the 830 came out, it was like, oh yes, get the OEM SSD.
Josh, you were going to say something?
You know, it kind of seems to me that Samsung is like the IBM of SSDs. That they,
failure.
you know, were to the baseline.
Oh.
They did okay, and then they had this huge jump, but then they never really improved upon it from the 830 to 840. I mean, yeah, it was small, better IOPS, whatever. But I would say that the jump with the Vector, and not just with in terms of performance, but with what OCZ was now offering the market, is almost bigger than what Samsung did. But you know, obviously with less money, less resources, and they were still able to, you know, take a step above what Samsung was able to do. So in many ways, I think the new direction that OCZ is heading in, and the investment that they made several years ago with buying IndieLinks, and then really kind of injecting this, not so much free for all, but you know what, we know what the targets are. We have to achieve them. We know what the limitations of the next several iterations of SATA technology is, and they've pretty much maxed it all out. So I'm kind of impressed with what OCZ has done with the Vector.
I am too, but I'll tell you what maybe makes me maybe lean towards the 830, which is, you know, again, it's a product that didn't come out in 2012. Is that with something like this, where we've had so many issues with reliability on SSDs, that it proved to be very reliable as well, and we don't have that much data on the Vector yet. You know, I agree. I'm very impressed with what OCZ has done, and I think in the next year it will be very important for them as a company that has had a lot of financial issues. How does the Vector do? How do the successive units that they sell that are theirs from top to bottom, how do they perform in the marketplace in general? Not necessarily benchmarks, but just, you know, how they sell and how people react to them and that kind of stuff. So, okay, let's do this. I think we have... Josh, would you pick the Vector over the 830? Do we all agree the 830 maybe is a better choice than the 840, even though it's a 2011 product?
Perhaps.
Yeah,
I mean, the
830
nice thing about
was
Samsung is,
it broke
like you
the
were
mold.
saying earlier, is firmware updates was not really necessary. A lot of these hard drives don't really say the same.
Okay, so what about... Alan, has this changed your mind on picking the 830 over the Red?
No, I'll still go with the Red.
Okay, so do we need to put... Josh, I don't think the Vector's not going to win. It'll get an honorable mention. We're going to have to pick between the 830 and the Red. The WD Red. Okay?
That's fine.
All right, so let's do the vote. Ken, again, off camera. I will probably report the right one, even if he disagrees with me. Let's vote for the WD Red. Oh, look at that. We got 3 of them.
I'm always
I was
on the
surprised.
losing team
Scott surprised me with that. I thought he was going with the 830. So the Western Digital, a standard spindle hard drive is going to win the best storage device of 2012.
Man.
So
Why not?
Our choice was either a standard spindle
How
hard
about the
drive
Intel
or an SSD that came out
8700,
in
like Knight
2011.
asked about?
Say it again.
Alan? The Intel 8700?
3700?
8700.
I don't know what that is.
The A's. Wait, what?
He said 3700.
8700.
There's no such
He
thing.
said 3700.
7.
Did he say 3700?
Yeah, he did.
All right, never mind.
Yeah, you
You
can't.
know, 8s and 3s, they...
Not
kinda
even
look alike.
close. Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so okay, we'll do that.
I mean, it was a coin flip for me. I was pretty much going back and forth on that.
Yeah.
I think SSDs in general is the biggest storage story of 2012 because this has been their year, but none particular.
Yeah, nothing super specific that stood out, and I think that's pretty much been the case since like the original Vertex.
Yeah, I think in 2011, when we had really affordable 128 gig SSDs, that's when people made the big jump. Now that we've got 240 and 256 gigs, it's still a lot more common to see the 60 and 120s and 128s than it is the higher. And so, I think that 2011 was really the year of the SSD.
Mark it down. All right, so our next category, guys, this is going to be like the motherboard one, and I kind of want to skip it, but I've already got it here. Best case, best chassis. There's like 900 of them, probably that came out this year. The few that we had written down here were the Corsair Carbide 300R, the Corsair Obsidian 550D, and the Cooler Master Cosmos 2. And then, yes, Scott adds in the mineral oil Aquarium PC that was never
That was
built.
2011.
That was also a 2011 product.
And still has not come to fruition, thanks to Ken
It's so complicated.
and his poor bathing habits.
It's so complicated. So what can we do with the best case? Because let's be honest, like if we pick the 550D for whatever reasons, there's always going to be people that aren't going to agree with it, and it's going to be a huge number of people that disagree, right? Because there's always this one little thing in every little case that people like or don't like, and that makes it their favorite. I don't know.
One of
Go
the
ahead.
biggest problems is a lot of it is fashion, and fashion is very difficult to quantify by definition of being fashion.
Yes. Like I know Alan has very different requirements for a case than probably most of us do. He has room for like 15 hard drives, right?
I'm still clinging onto my Lian Li Coolant's water-cooled case that I will not let die. But I will say that whenever I do a build for anyone else, I typically go with an Antec 900.
Still a good case. I built my
Just
system with
that
this.
huge 200 millimeter fan on the top of the thing.
Yeah.
It just people dig that for some reason. Then they think it's cool.
I built my new system out of a Corsair 550D, right? This system right here. It had really good thermal performance as well as good acoustic performance. Easy to access. It has all the traits of a Corsair case that that they kind of, I don't want to say invented, but made standard for cases and that kind of stuff afterward. I'm almost tempted to make this. Oh, look, there's Mickey Mouse ears. I'm almost tempted to make this like a hey, congrats Corsair type category, because they did so many different things this year. They released so many different lines of cases down to, what are we down to, like $30 to $200, like $30 or something like that?
$49 for the 200R.
Yeah, and
Of course,
it's
they did a lot, period, this year.
yeah, they did. They
They
did.
did power supplies, they did keyboards, they did cases, they did...
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mice.
It's a growing company.
Mouse pads.
Invest.
Just buy some stuff. Oh.
$39 after rebate for the 200R, right? And it's, you're going to get what you pay for, but with this you have some standardized services or features and stuff like that at least.
I've got my personal opinion.
What's that?
It's the Cosmos 2.
Ken likes the Cosmos 2. I love the Cosmos 2.
That is like the best built case I've ever used. It's huge and garish and
Here's the, if we go to Newegg, it's also
and
$350.
no one should ever buy it, but it's the best case I've used.
I think that, look, that's
And you like it far more than the 650D.
The 650D didn't come out this year.
Oh. But that's when I got mine.
I think the
I do
Cosmos
really like the
2
650D. If I was building a system, it'd be in a 650.
So the Cosmos 2 is kind of like what the Level 10 aspired to be. Was like this super high end, well built thing. Like these doors, when they open up on the Cosmos 2,
It's like the
It
gates
feels
of
great.
heaven opened up and
it
you're
kind of.
basking in the
But they
glory
feel-
of God. And
They feel
all
strong. They feel
peace
sturdy.
from-
There's tons of space. There's lots of
Bands.
fans. Yeah, I do wish they had more. I wish more cases used the
Naked women?
cableless. Well, the cableless wireless fans, like where it just kind of, when you close the door, the pins connect, as opposed to having to reattach a cable or something like that. You don't have to do this in the Cosmos. I just meant that as a thing in general. It has room for some amount of hard drives that Alan would need to use. You can see that right here. There's 6 at the bottom plus 5 at the top. So we're getting close there for Alan's use cases. You can have dual 120 millimeter radiators in this thing, and it's
Alan could afford this if he hadn't bought a car and traveled to New York.
well, yeah, I travel to New York in general. We'll do that. So I would tend to agree with the Cosmos 2. It's the oldest of the cases that came out this year. It came out literally in January of this year, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Is this
Hi,
something?
my name's Josh. I'm cheap. I love the Carbide 300R. It has more space than any other mid-tower case of that price range. It's got the front panel USB 3.0 headers. Cooling is excellent. You can actually do, wires behind the motherboard tray and in between the back cover without having to get a small, C-clamp to get the back panel back on.
Right.
It's just enough space, and it's only like $79 or $69 on sale. I mean, it's just, and the cooling is very good. It's quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that, I mean, if you're
that's the problem.
buying
There's so
some
many.
for a business or your mom, it's a great case.
Ken wanted me to bring up the 400R.
Yeah.
This-
I like that over the 300R.
I like the handle that it has up
The
top.
handle's quite nice. That's what my HTPC is built in.
See
I'm
that?
sorry, those two glowy fans in the front make it look
There's a
so
button.
chintzy.
There's a
a button.
button to turn off the
Turn
LEDs.
off the LEDs. The 300R, when we looked at the 300 and the 400 next to each other because we got them at the same time, and the 300 just seems so crappier built for some reason. I don't remember quite what it was, but the 400 seemed a lot
This
better.
is why I think this is a loaded category, because there's so much to do. How about we don't pick a winner and we all pick one case that we like? And Alan, I guess we have to have you abstain because it has to be a case that came out this year. Is he muted or something? We didn't hear him.
No.
We didn't hear a response.
No, he's
Yeah, I can. That's fine.
So okay, I am going to pick the not a dryer hose. I'm going to pick the Cosmos 2. Josh, you want the 300R?
No, I would take the 650, even though it's an older product. I still absolutely
I-
love mine.
yeah, screw it.
What's that? What would you pick, Ken?
One of those cases, one of those two, actually.
One of those two, actually? Okay.
650D is
Okay.
like $150 now because
we're
it's
going
How
always
about
on
this, Scott?
sale.
Which of these two cases would you pick as the best case of 2012?
I didn't hear anything about 650. I thought it was a 550.
Cosmos 2 or 650D?
I
It's
was
like,
gonna
what's your
pick
favorite
550.
color, blue or yellow? Oh, mine's red.
Too bad, you're out of the conversation.
Well, in this case, you just started describing and it actually wasn't.
We didn't actually talk about
I don't
the
know
650D,
anything about
so-
the 650D at all.
I'm just
so.
going to pick those two, and they're going to be co-winners. That's a cop-out as well, but
But
Yeah,
you don't have
it's-
to. You don't have to team lift the 650D.
you do. That's true. It takes two people to lift up the Cosmos 2 onto the build rack there. So, all right, let's see. Let's go through these other categories. These will be a little bit more interesting. Best price drop. Okay, this is very arbitrary again, but let's see. Let's talk about SSDs, AMD Radeon GPUs, Korean 2560 by 1440 displays, or system memory.
Now, can we change that Korean 2560 by 1440 displays to price drop of
Displays in general.
good IPS panels? Because now you can get super IPS stuff for $199 that is just phenomenal looking. And that's just not the Korean stuff at 27 inches.
Okay, how about we add that as well?
Sure.
Okay, so that's SSDs, Radeon AMD Radeon 7000 series GPUs specifically, and the displays and system memory. So this is a great category. It's going to be hard to pick. We've talked about SSDs. We've now seen SSDs regularly selling for under $1 a gig. Now you can get them in the 70s, 70 cents per gig fairly regularly. And if you get them on sale, you can get, like, I bought an Agility 4 that we're going to use on a test bed for like 52 cents per gig, right? And that's pretty awesome. Radeon GPUs, we talked about those already. We have the 7000s. The 7970 launched at $599, Josh. and now it's $379.
Yeah.
Good IPS panels. You were just talking about. You can get good 24-inch panels for $199.
Okay, a year ago, a 24-inch IPS panel is now $199. $400 to $199.
So it went from $400 to $199. So halved in
Yeah.
price essentially. Okay.
Yeah.
And then 2560 by 1440 panels. Even if we don't know what the Cat Leap cost last year, but we know what the Cat Leap cost this year. We know what it's done to the high resolution monitor market, right? It used to be only Dell was your option essentially, and it was $1,000 or more for a 2560 resolution panel, and now you can get them for $330 shipped
From Korea.
from Korea. And system memory, you can get 32 gigs of memory for $118 or something like that, maybe even less. I don't know. I just picked that number out. I don't know why I did that, but how do we pick this? How do we decide between these 5 things?
Personally, I would have it toss up between an SSD or system RAM because those are practical price drops these days, and they're starting to make them. It's not too long ago where you started seeing your choices between 2, 3, or 4 gigabytes of RAM in a laptop for cheap, and that's
Yeah.
not nearly enough for what people want to do with it. And part of it was because people didn't want to make the jump to 64-bit, and now that they made the system memory so much cheaper, they actually can justify putting 64-bit version of Windows on it, or whatever operating system.
As a correction to myself, you can get 32 gigs of memory for as low as $129.99 now.
And okay, so that's cool and that's really neat that memory's that cheap. But you don't need 32 gigs of RAM.
That's
But you know what? I could
You
use
need
8
more than
gigs for $30
Yeah.
of fast
okay.
stuff.
I'll give you that, but
So maybe
I mean,
32 gig is not the best example.
I mean,
It gives the OEMs a reason to go over 4, right?
yeah,
And
but
that is going to be very necessary soon. You're seeing browsers eat up gigabytes.
I've got an A6 processor with 12 gigs of RAM.
and I've used 24 gigs of RAM on our video workstation before.
And you're no 24 gigs of RAM.
However, it's not useful to 99.8% of people. Any RAM above maybe 16.
RAM
maybe.
disk, AMD has that free RAM disk software.
Yeah, no,
But
no.
that's the problem is that 16 gigabytes. Yeah, sure. We're not talking about having lots and lots of RAM. We're talking about having big price drops. And
The fact that we can
this
get
has a very practical purpose of getting people off of 2 gigabytes, which they really need to get off of 2 gigabytes.
Do you really think that OEMs will start shipping, like, I mean, they could still ship 4 gig systems because it will still cost less money.
Sometimes they do.
And they still sometimes do as well, but you used to see a choice between do you want 3 or 4 gigabytes of RAM for under $500 or $600,
This
and
is an
maybe
interest-
occasionally a 2.
An interesting metric is if you look at Newegg, and I just searched for 8 gig DDR3, there are 20 entries for 8 gigs of memory, either 1 or 2 DIMMs, between $30.99 and $35.99. So there are 20 options within a $5 window for 8 gigabytes of DDR3 memory. That's pretty impressive. But I think the SSD price drops are impressive. I think all of these are really impressive. I think I'm going to go ahead and say, is it cool with you guys if we take the 7000 series GPUs off this list?
Leave it on the list, just don't have it be a winner.
Well, I think in terms of picking our winner, I don't think we should maybe include that because while it was a significant price drop, we all kind of agreed that it was priced too high at first, and we're used to seeing price drops in the GPU space about this much. Does that seem fair?
Yes, after a year,
Okay.
definitely.
So system memory SSDs. Josh, I know where your heart lies with the solid IPS panels. And Ken, are you
Super.
on the side of the SSD or the 27-inch panel?
27-inch panel.
Ken's on the 27-inch panel side. Alan, where are you at on this debate?
I'm on anything storage, either the RAM or the solid state.
Okay, well, you can only pick one.
Okay.
There's just
Solid state.
there's just no way you could have afforded there's no way I would have bought a 27-inch panel a year ago. There's absolutely no way. And now I'm
True.
thinking about buying a second one.
That's true.
There's a lot of people.
That's what he
there's
can
a lot
do
of
with
people out there
Pell
that there's
Grants.
no way they would buy an SSD until last year.
Yeah. But
yeah.
this is like a $600 difference at the minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of money.
I'm with you. But how many people jumped on that Korean panel obscure deal versus any SSD?
That doesn't mean that
That's
it's
me.
the best.
No,
deal.
that's a.
Okay, you know what?
It's the
I'm
most
going to
popular.
jump ship here
Okay.
and say memory because going to 2x4 gigs. I mean, 2x2 was so common last year, and now we have 8 gigs of just absolutely dirt cheap memory. That 1866 for $35.
2x1 was sickeningly common.
So
Yeah.
that gives us 1 for SSD, 2 for memory.
3 if you include Alan.
Well, I'm putting Alan on SSD.
Okay.
Alan, did you say memory or SSD? Alan, you're muted.
No, he's just not talking.
He didn't say a whole lot.
I'll just go with SSD.
Okay, so he was on SSD, 2 memory, and 1. If I had to pick one,
I didn't vote yet, by the way. I was talking up memory. Didn't mean I voted
what's your
for it.
vote then? What's your vote?
I was talking up SSDs in a lot of perhaps category, and I voted for the Reds, right? It's a really coin flip between
Sneaky,
SSDs and
sneaky.
system memories. I say SSDs to be honest with you because now we're starting to see them being adopted.
Okay.
I mean, system memory was really important, but we're now starting to see them adopted in reasonable computers. and it's
I
the
am.
biggest up yet.
I think I'm going to go with memory as well, which means Ken has to move away from his pick of the panel.
SSDs.
Okay, well, there we go.
SSDs.
There you have it.
So SSDs wins with a close battle to system memory.
I just thought it was interesting because, you know, I think we're going to see a few more RAM disk type situations where
If you can get that OS level,
soon, in 6 months, we're going to see 16 gigs at $35.
Yeah.
Why not use a RAM disk like that?
I don't know why I don't like the idea of RAM disk. I don't like the idea of a RAM disk.
Alan, do you like the idea of a RAM disk?
One word: volatile.
Okay,
So-
okay, 20.
So no, I don't like the idea of a RAM disk.
Now, I mean, like, I could see if they can somehow get the actual memory into a box and put a battery in there,
That'd be awesome.
and somehow
We
keep
did
it
that.
powered.
Not with DDR3.
Gigabyte had one. It was DDR1,
Exactly.
and it
Yeah,
had
I know.
and it had a lithium battery in there. That
I could see that being
Would lasted
a-
for 30 minutes, but then you had to reboot your computer. Yeah. Bad news.
I agree. I think we'll see more from that in the future. Okay, here's our last real serious category. I know Alan wants to get out and see the world of cabbies.
Cereal.
Cereal. So cereal. Best new technology. This is as vague as it gets. Thunderbolt, those Korean monitors, high-res panels, Cherry-style keyboards, mini ITX motherboards. That's what I got. You guys have anything else you think you should add on the list? Alan?
Astroglide 3.0.
That's okay. Well,
No, there's no such thing. Sorry.
Alan, do you think there's anything new technology on here that should be added?
Those high-res monitors aren't new technology; they're just cheap.
Yeah, only one of those things is new technology.
Well,
That's
okay. Let me
Yeah.
maybe new technology. Maybe is newly popular technology.
Oh.
Does that make more sense?
up and coming.
Yeah.
Then I might. Then okay, I'm gonna say Thunderbolt is not necessarily popular, even though all these motherboard manufacturers are making such a big deal out of it. It's not popular yet.
No.
I wouldn't consider it popular for
Okay.
2012.
okay.
Put it that way.
Okay. So now we're down to mini ITX motherboards, and I kind of take that not just specifically for any specific motherboard, but just the idea of people building, the fact that you can build a completely functional, no compromise system out of a board this size.
Yeah, but you've been able to do that for
Right.
quite a while.
They've been around for a while.
But I think
I don't think
more and
anything's-
more people are doing it.
Do you?
I do.
Do you?
I do.
When we get a
So you mean Z? So Ryan, you mean Z77 mini ITX motherboards?
I mean, high performance mini ITX systems.
I
The
mean-
fact that EVGA just came out with a mini ITX motherboard.
But-
The fact that Asus touts this as having almost the exact same overclocking capability as a full size ATX motherboard.
So, when we go to QuakeCon,
Okay.
do we really see that many mini ITX rigs?
No, but it's on the rise.
In
it's
fact,
growing.
in fact, I think we will skip mini ITX as a form factor because people are going more towards gaming laptops. We saw a lot more laptops at QuakeCon.
Yeah,
than
I feel like we've said
ever
that
before.
every year for the last 5 as
But,
well.
I mean-
maybe.
Does the mid step really need to be there between ATX, micro ATX, and laptop?
Maybe. I kind of think it does because this is the smallest. Oops. This is the smallest platform you can put a full size PCI Express slot on, right? When you get into laptops, you're not going to have the expandability, not going to have the upgradability that I think a lot of gamers are still going to want going forward, despite the fact that we have these debates that may not be the case. You can't get any smaller than this, right? I have sitting right next to
but
it
I
that
mean,
Intel
you can have a
NUC.
small motherboard, but what kind of case will put it in if you put any, let's say, video card in it?
What
It's a mini
about
ITX, but it's going to be a dual or triple slot card. What type of case will fit that? You'll have to be larger than the mini ITX board
okay?
because it'd be overhanging, right?
What
Go ahead.
what about Thunderbolt GPUs? Doesn't that kind of kill your entire argument for the mini ITX? I know we
If
haven't
that
seen
becomes
them
a
yet.
thing, and
But-
what about magical unicorns and stuff? I mean, that'll.
How about it like MPCI Express? You know, I mean, how's that different than Thunderbolt in that kind of application?
More bandwidth.
I think the Thunderbolt adapters could be amazing for this kind of idea of taking this ThinkPad Lenovo X1 Carbon Ultrabook and plugging in a GTX 660 Ti to it or something. But I've thought that for a long time, and
It's not popular yet.
it's not popular yet, and I don't
Neither
even
is
know.
It's just not popular yet.
There's got to be another issue because we saw that MSI Gus at CES last year.
well,
And
MSI,
I'll tell you this. Out of this whole list, I think Ken's monitors were the most popular.
Yeah, I mean, I probably mislabeled this category. I just meant like what is becoming a big trend. Like, but I guess is the same thing, right?
So back to Thunderbolt GPUs.
How about a big trend? The big trend I'm thinking of is not buying Windows 8. How's that for a trend?
Aw,
No, I'm not putting that on here. Okay,
poor Windows 8.
One thing that I would actually like to say as well, though, is when it comes to Korean monitors, it is really, really nice to have an option for a good display that's higher than 60 hertz. And mind you have to overclock it yourself and cross your fingers and hope that you can actually get availability of it, because I know it's not really available that much. But it's really nice to have that option
Yeah.
of, hey, you can get an IPS panel that's more than 60 hertz. And I don't mean like 120 hertz for TVs where it's just
yeah.
interpolation or faking it or whatever. Doubling frames.
I see what you're saying.
I could say one thing. I hope that next year on this list we have 120 hertz displays.
Right.
I hope we have a lot
IPS
more
displays or
120
otherwise
hertz display
distributed displays.
because currently it blows.
Yes.
It does. You know, I'm interested. This category surprises me because I really came into it thinking that everybody would talk about all the cool stuff that Thunderbolt has enabled. It hasn't happened yet, but it will enable external graphics. That it will enable ultra thin laptops to be super useful, having expandability. The fact that we have super high end storage devices that can go through it. I
mean,
Dude, it's 1394B.
Well, no, it's not.
I'm-
it's not. I mean, it's not even close to that. It's
No,
a PCI
it's
Express
not, but-
extension. I mean,
Okay, 1394B was the next big thing.
but it was still a protocol, right?
Yeah,
the
but
reason Thunderbolt could
how
be
many
cool is its
motherboard
PCIe
manufacturers
expansion.
ever had anything with that? It was like 1 gigabyte. They tried it for a
still
couple
do
of
it.
years.
They
and never took
still
off.
do it. Gigabyte still does it.
Yeah,
Ace.
I think Thunderbolt will be.
The reason Thunderbolt is not FireWire is that it's just an extension of an existing standard. They're just taking PCI Express and they're just making it go external.
And
So-
the reason I'm kind of worried about it is the certification process over this last 12 months has changed several times. That's why we have a Thunderbolt EX, that add-in card for your Asus Z77 motherboards. It's never gone on sale. Those motherboards came out in what, March?
Never.
It's never gone on sale because they had it certified at a certain standard and it changed, and then they had it certified again and it changed. Right? That's not all Intel's fault, but it's a lot of Intel's fault, I think. So I thought going into this Thunderbolt was going to be the dominant favorite, but that's not the case, and I'm okay with that.
That being said, I'm probably one of the people who wants Thunderbolt to take off most because I like Ultrabooks.
Right.
And the fact that we saw the Belkin Thunderbolt dock at CES, and we're going to see it again at CES next year.
Not like next
Not the
month.
best sign in the world.
Future is here. Sort of.
I remember seeing this last
It was here
year.
last year.
Yeah, that crappy Matrox
really
one
here
came
now.
out, but it's like $250.
But I mean, Alan, you've talked to these storage guys. They're going to have, we have a couple of Thunderbolt devices that you've been testing for a little while. We've had some problems with, but the potential is there.
Yeah,
it's not
actually,
Thunderbolt's fault.
It's really that's a very, very good thing to bring up, is that we've had stuff that's just sort of so flaky, and there's just drivers are a pain to come up with for it, or there are products that there's a product out that's Thunderbolt, works under Mac, don't have Windows drivers yet. There's another one that's it's kind of hit or miss. It's like working weird. I mean, and I think it's because I think Intel sort of screwed it up there because of the whole changing the standard around. If they had stuck with whatever they did right out of the gate, and they were just like settled on it and just never messed with it after that, everybody could have been on the same page with that standard by now, and you'd probably have much more compatibility. But yeah, it's getting messed up in the external devices. It's throwing a wrench in the motherboard manufacturers. So it'll probably be top on the list of best new technology that's been installed all year, I guess.
I think
So is the winner here essentially technology that had so much potential but has never taken off? Because I can't think of anything this year that has been really exciting to me.
Maybe we should make that the category, the biggest disappointment, and name it Thunderbolt. Done. Done.
I could probably think of more disappointing things than Thunderbolt if I really
Yeah,
tried.
but nothing. I mean, there's so much potential to be over the top, to revolutionize, especially external storage and cameras, all this other stuff. But it's like minutia has kept throwing wrenches into the gears.
Yeah.
It's just all sabotage. It's shoes into gears.
Scott, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend right now for new popular technology, and this is partially a talk about cherries because we haven't actually done it yet.
Right.
Before we're going to declare a winner, is that people are actually starting to care about input-output a lot more. People were kind of being like, oh, what is the best our computer can do? But now people are starting to care about, oh, how can we interface with it better? How can we have touchscreens? Is what someone is writing, even though it says lulz. People are actually caring more about the quality of. It used to be people just bought crap keyboards because they were
Yes.
cheap and they actually worked, and it's not a lot of people because some people are satisfied with what they get, but some people are now saying, oh wait, there actually is better options. I don't have to replace a keyboard every year because I wear a key, or
I agree. I think the fact that you've seen so many companies get into the keyboard manufacturing or reselling business just shows you that it is an incredibly popular place there where people are spending their money.
and display industry, and that's the thing. Both keyboards and display, we're caring about both.
Right. So the interface, not necessarily. Yeah. Right. So display as an interface as well. And I was one that typed in touchscreen. I had thought about it originally, but I knew it wasn't going to have a chance. And I don't think it should in terms of an enthusiast, PC building type audience. Right. That's not really what they're interested in. We were talking about, me and Ken were talking before the episode started, do we want to do like a best tablet or a best laptop or something like that? And it just doesn't kind of fit with the mechanics of this component level type discussions we were having. So, I believe that probably the winner in this category will end up being those high res monitors. I mean, what are you guys leaning towards? We've kind of decided Thunderbolt is not it. That leaves high res monitors. the Cherry keyboards or Mini ITX motherboards, and I really like the Mini ITX platform as a whole, but I don't think you guys are digging it quite as much as I am.
I like the idea of the Cherry Switch keyboards, but myself, I will not get one until I have to.
Oh, why would you have
Just
to?
like what Scott said, what I have works. So it's just, when I buy a new keyboard, then I will read Scott's excellent article and settle on a particular type of color switch, and then I will buy a keyboard. But until then, I still got a working keyboard.
Anybody else? Josh, what do you think? You're thinking monitors?
Yeah, monitors. Go with it.
All right. I'll put a winner cat leap. We need to find a good stock image we can use for the term cat leap. Maybe you have a cat jumping. Think about it, guys.
I don't think there are any cat pictures online.
I don't. That's all the categories we had. We had one more in our show notes. That's best Lenovo laptop on my desk, and the nominees are the Lenovo ThinkPad Twist.
There's a review up on the site. You should read it.
There is a review published today by our own Maury Titleman. Oh, look at Twisted. Touchscreen. See? Trend of the year.
Can you skip it across the lake?
I don't want to. We have the ThinkPad X230 with the slice battery, which makes it a laptop circa 1984.
A ThinkPad circa 1980.
There was no laptop in 1984 except those ones you carried like a suitcase.
And the Yoga 13, which is a nice Ultrabook that does, well, I guess as the name implies, yoga. And
Does it do Tai Chi, though?
yeah,
Does it wear tight pants?
Alan hopes so. And then I have the X1 Carbon on my desk as well. So what do you guys think the winner of that one is? I'm going to go with the Yoga 13.
I actually like that one. I
It's
don't know
true.
why I like it,
It's
but
good.
I like it.
All right.
I'll jump up for it if you know what I mean.
Okay, well, I'm going to take these selections. I'm going to write a short story on them, and we'll post it sometime tomorrow when we post the podcast up as well, because I think these Editor's Choice Awards that we have just given out are probably the most influential things that will be handed out for the entire year. I think when people find out what our favorite motherboard is, 4 different ones,
And our favorite
they will
products.
unsubscribe.
Our favorite products that came out in 2011.
and one of our favorite products of 2012 came out in 2011.
650D as well.
What's that?
650D as well.
The 650D as well. So maybe they'll think we're old and behind the times. So we're not going to do any picks of the week. We're not going to do anything like that. That is going to round out our podcast for this week. It was obviously quite long, but hey, celebrating the end of the world. Well, that didn't happen. Celebrating the end of the year, preparing everybody for CES, which will be starting what's that day? The 6th? We go out there or something like
Fifth, I
that?
think.
5th, I think you're flying us out the 5th
The 5th?
to eat all your food.
Oh, damn it. So we will be covering that. Our sponsor this year is actually AMD, so they're the ones shelling out the money so I can actually bring Josh and Alan out as well. So we will thank them for that. Again, thanks for joining us this year, guys. We had a lot of fun. Jeremy's not here, but I'm sure he's very thankful for everybody listening to us mumble on.
During his drinking and ice fisting.
Ice fishing. I don't know why I have to
Oh.
go through this every week. Thank you guys.
Karate.
Thank you guys seriously for being fans and coming and hanging out in the chat room and watching the live stream or downloading this episode. It's this. I got to be honest with you. We don't make very much money off of the podcast, if at all. The amount of time we pay people to be on it and all that kind of stuff. We do it mostly because we don't talk to each other any other time during the week, for the most part, unless something else goes wrong. This is our person-to-person interaction as a company, so we're glad we get to record it and share it with everybody and somehow make content out of it for the most part. So I liked this episode, though. I liked how this went as opposed to just rehashing things. Maybe we have to do some more of this kind of stuff throughout the next year as well. So that's it. Thanks, guys. PCPro.com/podcast. Share it with all your friends. Tell them to come. This is also good. What is the airing out in the open how he picked these selections. So if anybody gives us crap about how in the hell did they pick the Samsung 830 as one of their best products, we can point them to a timestamp in this podcast where we agree that that is the case. So, all right, thanks guys for hanging out, and I hope everybody had a good holiday. We will see you next week. I'm Ryan
Next year.
Schroeder. Well, no,
I'm-
it will be next year. No, I'm sorry. It'll be next year. And
Next year.
week.
Yes.
I'm Ryan Shroud still.
I'm Josh Walrath, but only for about another 3.5 hours. Then I'm going to be Madeline.
Madeline. What? I'm Alan Malventano.
And I'm the Beard, the Canadian, and Scott Michaud.
Thanks, guys.